Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. Now, shifting focus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi delivered a strong indirect response to US President Donald Trump's tariff escalation against India. He said the country will never compromise on the interests of farmers, fishermen and dairy farmers. Listen in to the Prime Minister.
हमारे लिए अपने किसानों का हित सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा। और मैं जानता हूं, व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं। मेरे देश के किसानों के लिए, मेरे देश के मछुआरों के लिए, मेरे देश के पशुपालकों के लिए आज भारत तैयार है।
That was Prime Minister Narendra Modi declaring that he is ready to pay the price if need be. Now, viewers, this comes after US President Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing an additional 25% tariff on all imports from India, citing New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. So this essentially makes it to 50% tariff imposed on India by the United States. In fact, this move comes just weeks before crucial strategic and trade talks taking place between the two nations, and it certainly marks a sharp turn in US-India relations and also raises concerns of economic coercion under the guise of sanctions. Now remember, Trump invoked emergency powers under US law, calling India's Russian oil imports a national security threat, and also warned of broader tariffs on countries engaging in similar trade with Russia. Now, reacting to this development, the Ministry of External Affairs too released a statement. It said the US imposing additional tariffs on India is extremely unfortunate. It also added that several countries continue buying Russian oil in their national interest. India is not the only one. In fact, India strongly terms these actions as unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. It also said that India will take all necessary steps to protect its national and strategic interests, something in line with what Prime Minister also asserted today. Now, amidst the tariff tensions rising with the US, it has been announced that Prime Minister Modi will also be visiting China, and this is for the SCO summit on August 31st. Remember, viewers, this will be his first visit post the Galwan clash and also sixth in total. In fact, in another development, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval landed in Moscow yesterday. And this is on a pre-scheduled visit, which of course has now gained urgency after Donald Trump's tariff threat. And meanwhile, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is also in Moscow, so there is speculation that the two may meet as both sides attempt to manage a rapidly spiraling situation here. Now, viewers, though Donald Trump has not softened up, friends of India are definitely alarmed by this development. Former US Ambassador to UN and fellow Republican leader Nikki Haley publicly questioned Donald Trump's stance, writing on X, and I quote her. She said India should not be buying oil from Russia, but China, an adversary and the #1 buyer of Russian and Iranian oil, got a 90-day tariff pause. Don't give China a pass and burn a relationship with a strong ally like India. Now, crucial question to ask viewers is, what is America's reality at this point? It has certainly turned into a sanction regime. If you see, since 1948, US has imposed 486 solo sanctions. In fact, Urjit Patel, former governor of RBI, says that the US has pioneered secondary sanctions on industrial scale, which relies on American financial systems and also on the supremacy of dollar. These sanctions have created problems for emerging economies, including India. So at this point, one needs to ask, what's next? Well, with both India and the US locked in a high-stakes strategic dance, and Russia, of course, which being at the center, the question is this just a pressure tactic on the part of US President Donald Trump before the crucial trade talks, or there's more that lies behind this?
Let me go, please.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions
you're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're
what's
going to
to
see a
come.
lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
On the India penalties, do you have any similar plans to enact more tariffs on China as it relates
Could
to their
happen.
purchases?
Could happen. Depends on how we do. Could happen.
President,
Brian. This is the largest investment Apple has ever made in America.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that Apple will spend another $100 billion in U.S. investments, with CEO Tim Cook standing by his side in the Oval Office.
The company is also unveiling its ambitious new.
Now, that's a very bold statement coming in from Prime Minister Narendra Modi and clearly a stunned response to the US President as well. Prime Minister Modi said that he's ready to pay the price, India is ready to pay the price, but it will not compromise when it comes to the interest of its farmers and fishermen. Clearly, a very strong statement comes after Donald Trump announced and imposed 50% tariff on India. Remember, it comes in a series of steps. First, it was 25% plus penalty. On the top of it, you had 25% again. And now there's also talks of secondary sanctions that could be imposed on India by the United States. So clearly, the tariff escalation, the tariff situation right now between India and the US seems to be escalating, and Prime Minister Modi now making a bold statement on the same. Let's also listen in to Prime Minister Modi. So this is the recent statement coming in from the Indian Prime Minister, where he's clearly stated that India will back the interest of its farmers, it will back the policies of its agriculture, and it will not bow down to the pressure that's now coming in from Washington. Remember all the statements that have been coming from the US President and of course a tariff announcement. They seem to be a part of pressure tactics that Donald Trump is building up ahead of the crucial talks that are going to take place between the two countries. But of course, India now clearly stating its response that it will not compromise, it will not bow down to the pressure, and it will maintain what its interests have been. Now, viewers, remember, this is essentially the sticking point in the negotiations, in the trade negotiations that have been going on between the US and India for a trade deal. Agriculture seems to be a sticking point. India is not ready to open or give access to US into its agriculture market or the dairy market. But in fact, if you look at the developments from the other side, meanwhile, the Prime Minister has made a statement, but from the other side as well, the situation is escalating rapidly. First came the 25% tariff plus penalty, then came another 25%, and now there are talks of secondary sanctions as well. Donald Trump was heard saying that there could be more sanctions. So which means the situation is currently not stable and will escalate as well. Now I'm also being joined by Patikret Payne. He's a senior research fellow at SPMRF. Thank you, Mr., for joining us here on News 9. Now I want to ask you, it's a bold statement coming in from the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It's a clear, stern response to the US President as well. He's clearly said that he's ready to pay the price but will not compromise. What do you make of the statement?
Well, I strongly support and I salute the government of India for taking a strong stand in favor of the farmers of this country. There are more than 10 crore farmers in India who are involved in poultry, fisheries, dairy, and agriculture. And there's no reason why we should open that market for the American multinational corporations. Secondly, if you look at the dairy sector, the The cows in the dairy industry in America are fed non-veg food. So I don't know. I mean, there are question marks on how safe that kind of food is for the people who consume it, and there are health factors. Agriculture and such activities in America are highly subsidized. So if you open up that market, the Americans will be providing us with items which are heavily subsidized. So cost-wise, what would happen is this, that it will be difficult for Indian farmers or the producers to compete with them. And so our industry will be lagging behind and it will collapse. And there will be an overwhelming dependence on imports then. We do not want that kind of situation to happen. We want our own food security. 10 crore farmers and their livelihoods are involved in this whole issue. So why should we open up that sector for the American companies? Our food security, livelihood of our own people is more important than the profit of the American entities. We don't have any problem with the free trade agreement. We have a free trade agreement in the United Kingdom. There are many other countries with which we have free trade agreement. But two things, free trade agreement is all about trade-offs. It means it's a win-win situation for both sides. And secondly, you cannot have a free trade agreement by putting a gun on somebody's head. America right now, Trump administration rather, is putting the gun on the head of the Indians and saying, either you do this or I will do that. That is not the way you do a trade deal. And thirdly, there are many areas of convergence between India and United States. Indian government of India did not make a single statement insulting people of America. We respect United States as a country. There are many areas of collaboration, but some of the statements coming from the president of United States are very unparliamentary. You can't call the fourth largest economy of the world as a dead economy. And if it is a dead economy, as per him, then what are Trump Towers doing in India? Why is it that Trump's own corporation has such massive exposure in the real estate market in India? So I think these pressure tactics, it's also reflected by the fact that there is a 21 days gap window, which means for its implementation, which means the Americans are hoping that we will succumb to the pressure and listen to what they say. So the whole alibi, whole pretext of we buying Russian oil is just a false flag. The ultimate objective is to pressurize us so that we open up our agriculture sector, which we should not open up. And I think the whole country should firmly stand behind Prime Minister Modi and support the stand of the government of India.
Right, Mr.
Sure
Pine, you clearly said that, with Donald Trump, it's always like it's my way or highway. And India has now clearly shown that it will not bow into that pressure. It will not give into that bullying that's now coming from the US president. And interestingly, you were mentioning about the pressure tactics. Now, I want to ask you, if you look at the developments from the other side, first, it was 25% tariffs plus penalty. On the top of it, you also had 25% tariffs. And now there's talk of secondary sanctions as well. So do you think this is just posturing to gain an upper hand in the trade negotiations then?
It's absolutely posturing, because if tomorrow India stops taking oil from Russia and we move towards the Middle Eastern suppliers, the price of oil will go up to $200 a barrel. That is not something the Americans even want. So I think in the back channel, then they will tell us, no, don't stop taking oil from Russia. That's number one. Secondly, if you look at these sanctions, what happens is this: the pharma sector, 40% of the generic drugs that America procures are from India. The pharma sector, the derived electronics sector, which means components, critical components of finished products like iPhones, there is no sanction on that. There's no tariff on that. So critical sectors like pharma and electronics have been exempted so that Americans don't suffer. Yes, there are certain sectors like leather, gems and jewelry, textile, which might get impacted, but the whole impact will be less than 1% of the GDP of this country. So these are pressure tactics, but I think Trump administration must be advised by somebody that India is the same country which fought for its independence. And secondly, this is the same country on which sanctions were imposed in 1998 by Clinton administration of United States after we detonated the nuclear bomb. We did that nuclear test. And then what happened? Within 3 years, 4 years, the Americans actually took away the sanctions. Clinton himself came and, as a visitor in India, as a head of state, there was an official visit, which means that they realized that sanctions could not make India succumb. We became far more resilient as an economy. The same thing will happen this time as well. We have to stand firm, and we should not open up our sector to American companies. Wherever there are opportunities, we should collaborate. But we must also remember, America itself has a very protected economy. There are many sectors in America where they do not allow foreign companies to enter. So why should we open up our dairy sector and poultry sector to unbridled imports that will have severe negative impact in the long run? Back to you.
Right, Mr. Pine. Now you clearly said that a trade deal is about a win-win situation. There is give and take between the two countries. And now when we talk about this, when India has clearly said that it will not compromise when it comes to the interest of its farmers or fishermen or dairy farmers, and US, trying to continuously assert pressure, where do you think we can reach a middle ground then?
Well, whether we reach a middle ground or not, that depends entirely on the Americans. Because there are certain areas which are no-go areas when it comes to the trade negotiation. Those sectors include dairy, poultry, fisheries, and agriculture. Everything else, I think negotiations can continue. We had a successful trade deal with United Kingdom, but the American mindset, or rather the mindset of Trump administration, that every other country is subservient to the Americans. That is not going to happen. We want to be treated as a country, as a sovereign country, as an equal country. Now, you can't treat us as a colony. The approach, it appears, is to be that you are a colony of ours. And if you look at the exposure of Indian economy towards the American market, it's probably around 1.5 to 2% of the entire GDP, which means the reality is this. Even now, a lot of American companies are investing in India because it's not easy to suddenly take away the supply chain, which means this, that I don't think the whole of American industry agrees to what Trump is doing. And secondly, our exposure to exports, and especially to the American market, is so less that we as an economy will not get impacted severely. There will be certain hiccups, there's no doubt about that. But we would not get devastated as Trump is envisioning that would happen to us. So I think these are pressure tactics. Eventually, if you see, there is nothing called a last word when it comes to Trump administration. We have seen that they imposed 250% tariff on China and then went for a negotiation. It may so happen in two weeks' time, Trump will come up and say, oh, we had a great talk, India is a great country and all that stuff. So U-turns, we have seen many. And I'm sure it is good for both countries to improve the relation. But improving relation, having a trade deal with the United States doesn't mean that we have to open up our such sectors which are completely sensitive for us and our food security and the interests of the farming community. That is a no-go area. I mean, if I have a good relation with somebody in the organization, in the office I work, it doesn't mean that I allow those people to enter my zone of privacy. So there are certain things that America has to understand, that you have to understand our concerns as well. If they don't understand, then eventually there will be a stalemate. That doesn't mean trade will stop. Trade will continue as it is. It may go down a little bit. It will still continue because the Americans also depend on India. We have to still understand one thing. India always says that, America is an important trading partner. It's a strategic partner. The Americans also have to realize the same thing, especially the Trump administration. They can't disown us. They can't completely ignore us. If they ignore it, well, then it's fine. We will survive our own way. This is a 5,000 to 10,000-year-old civilizational nation state which has survived for a long period of time, and it will survive in the future as well.
Right, Mr.
Trade or no trade.
Thank you
Back
so
to
much.